Hello and welcome to finally part 2 of this Forest Nutvi grammar course. Today we will start with the very first grammar rules. We will look at how to make very simple sentences, and we'll also talk about some grammar terms that you will come across again and again in the Nutvi community. So let's start with the simplest sentence possible, and that are commands. So commands are stuff like run, eat. So if you want someone to do something, and in English you can just kind of yell a verb at them. So verb is a word that describes an action. So run describes the action of running. So we can actually do exactly the same in Nutvi, which is great because now we get our very first sentences which are just one word. So run would become duel in Nutvi because duel means to run. Leave would be whom. Come would be za'u. Please help. Rut'e srungsi. So srungsi looks like two words but actually translate to just help in English. So srungsi is just one word meaning to help. And rut'e means please. And we can use that like in English to make our command a bit more polite. Please repeat. Rut'e lein. And now you see I added a second version here. Rut'e livein. What happened here? Lein means to repeat. Now we can change the lein to livein by putting the eve infix in here. Infixes is something that you will learn probably very late. Like, I don't know exactly in which lesson it will be in this grammar series, probably like 10, 11, something like that. But I still wanted to show you this example here already, because with commands you can optionally put in the eve infix, but you don't have to. So you can do commands without eve infix, you never need to use them, it doesn't change the meaning. But you will sometimes see others do this. So you will see people say rut'e livein instead of rut'e lein. Don't be scared. It's something you will learn later, and most dictionaries will, if you put in the word livein, will tell you, hey, this is just lein with the eve infix. So no panic. You can ignore it for now. We will talk about this in a later video. For now, just remember, for commands, you can just say the verb and you have a command. So yeah, it's pretty much like in English, just say the verb and you have a command. Now these sentences have only one word, and that one word is a verb, so an action. Now we can add a second word in our sentence to get a simple sentence, namely the subject. A subject is a person or a thing that is doing the action. So for example, I run. This would in that way become oe duel or duel oe. And here the I is the subject because who runs? I'm the one running. So a subject in a sentence can either be a pronoun, so these are words like I, you, he, she, it, we, but it could also be just a noun. So a noun is a word that describes a thing, like an animal is a noun, house, love. So it doesn't have to be a physical thing, love is also a noun. So yeah, all these are nouns. So now we have a noun or a pronoun and a verb. The noun in this case is the subject because it is the one doing something. He runs, bo duel or duel bo. Here he is the subject because he's the one running. Runs is still the verb because it describes the action in the sentence. The dog runs, nantang tsiep duel or duel nantang tsiep. A cat runs, balukan tsiep duel, duel balukan tsiep. Yesterday I ran, tram oe duel. Or oe tram duel, or any other order is fine here. So here we have a random other word, the yesterday, which is an adverb. It is an adverb of time, so it describes when something happened. Tomorrow I will run, duel drei oe, oe duel drei, and so on and so forth. Every single other order would be fine here too. So yeah, now I have a small exercise for you, and I want you to really pause the video and think about this for a minute. Which differences between English and Nutvi can you spot in these examples? And specifically, of course, the words are different, that should be clear, but which grammar difference can you see? So please pause the video, take a minute or two to look at these examples and maybe even write down a list of differences you can see. Let's look at those differences. First of all, we have flexible word order. So oe dul and dul oe both can mean I run. They're basically interchangeable. Word order can have an impact on emphasis in the sentence, but especially for the beginning, you don't really need to think about that much, because in principle, it doesn't matter that much. Note that I say flexible word order, not free word order. In these examples that I gave you, any word order is possible. But there are indeed word order rules that you will learn later. If there is no rule for something, then that means that word order is free and you can do whatever you want. But across the entire language, it's not completely free, it's only flexible because there are rules that you have to follow. Then we have no conjugation. So what is conjugation? In English, I say I run, but I say she runs. So I add this S to show that the person who is running is a he or a she or a it. In NatWi, we don't do that. So we always use dul. In all these sentences, it was just dul. No articles. Articles are these small words that in English are very often placed in front of a noun. So de or e or un. And those just don't exist in NatWi. So strictly speaking, Balu kan siep dul could be translated in two different ways. It could be translated as the cat runs. It could also be translated as a cat runs. We usually just know from context what is meant. It hence doesn't have to be indicated on the verb. Oe dul, I run. Oe dram dul, yesterday I ran. So the run changes to ran in English. In NatWi, we don't need to have a change there. We can change the verb, so there are ways to change the verb, but for the beginning, we don't want to care about this. We want to have it simple for now. This also again means that one sentence can translate to many different things. Of course, in oe dram dul, it is very clear that I'm talking about yesterday, so about the past, because the word yesterday is in the sentence. But oe dul, while I translated it as I run, could in theory also mean I ran, or I will run, or I am running. It could have all these different meanings based on context. You see, this is something that I say a lot. One thing could translate to many different things. I cannot always, actually I can never write down all the possibilities how something could be translated. So usually I will give you one translation that is probably the most common translation or something that is based on context. But especially in exercises, I write down one solution. If you have a different solution, it might still be correct because you can translate things in many different ways. Now we talked about the differences between English and NatWi. This causes one problem. And I want you again think about what this problem could be. Specifically, think about the sentence Neytiri hears Ninat. Again, feel free to pause the video and think about it for a minute. What problem do these differences between English and NatWi cause here? We will immediately look at the solution. In this sentence, Neytiri hears Ninat, only word order tells us who hears and who is being heard. For example, I could change the word order, Ninat hears Neytiri, and it has exactly the same words. There is no change in the words. The only change that happened is word order. But the sentence suddenly has a very different meaning. NatWi has flexible word order. So this could cause a problem. Now, how do we know who hears and who's being heard? And exactly for that we have case endings. There are in complete 5 different case endings. Today we will focus on 2 of them. The rest you will learn step by step in different videos. So let's look at the different case endings. First of all, we have the subject. We already talked a bit about the subject in the very first sentences. There we said that the subject is the person or the thing who performs the action, who does something. So we had the examples, I run, he runs, the cat runs. So I, he, or the cat are the subject there because they are doing the action. But now we have more complex sentences. Now we also have a direct object. The direct object describes the thing or the person or the animal or whatever that is being verbed. So who is being heard? Who is hunted? What is being seen? So this question is answered by the direct object. So who is directly affected by the action? The subject is marked with the L ending. The direct object is marked with the T ending. So these endings, you put them at the end of the noun or the pronoun, and that way you know who is the subject in the sentence and who is the direct object in the sentence. Of course, it would be too easy if it would just be an L at every subject and a T at every direct object. The endings change slightly depending on how the word looks like. Let's first look at the L ending in detail. If a word ends in a vowel, so these are sounds like A, E, I, Ä, and so on, then you just put in an L. Nga would become ngal. If a word ends in a consonant or the double L or double R, then you add an il. For example, consonants are sounds like the T, the M, the M, and so on. Double L and double R we actually count as vowels, so they are so-called pseudo-vowels, but for case endings they usually behave like consonants. So for example, mo'at would become mo'atil. You see here also why we do this. If I would not put the vowel, so the I in between, just saying mo'atl, that would sound a bit weird, right? So then you have to say the atl as one syllable. That doesn't really work. So that's why we put the vowel in between the I to make it easier to pronounce. And if it ends in diphthong, so for example, kifgei ends in an A, the A is a so-called diphthong, then we put also an il there. So kifgei would become kifgeil. Other diphthongs are the I, the eu, and the au. Let's look at the T ending, and I will warn you, the table looks complicated, but ignore the grayed out part for the beginning. So again, we have a distinction between vowel and then the consonant plus double L and double R. If it ends in a vowel, then we can either just put a singular T without anything or a T with the E vowel. So nga could become ngat or ngati. Both are possible. And for the beginning, you don't really need to care about that. But more advanced speakers will usually use the E to give the sentence a better flow. So if the following word starts with a consonant, then you put the E there. If the following word starts with a vowel, then you don't need the E because then there is already this nice consonant-vowel flow. But for the beginning, you don't need to care about this. If a word ends with a consonant or with a double L or double R, then you can put either the T or the ED. Note that we currently do not have any official rule about what happens if a word already ends in a T. So for example, my example word mo'at ends already with a T. So can you now also just put the T there? So mo'ati, so you get double T there. We don't know. I would for now just put an ED there, so like I did there, mo'atid. But for all other consonant endings, you can also put T there. So for example, nantang, a Viperwolf, could become nantangti or nantangid. Both are possible. Now let's look at the stupidly complicated other nonsense down there. And what you see there is I listed all the diphthongs. So the A, the I, the eu, and the au. And for some reason, these have overly complicated rules. For every single diphthong, there's a different rule. I put them here for completeness sake because I like overviews to be complete. But there are good news here. Namely, the T is always possible. So you can always just put a T. And now you see that also for vowels, you can end things with T. And consonants, you usually can also just put a T. So for the T ending, you can just always put TI, so T. And it's correct. The only exception being, as I said, maybe if a word ends with a T already, then you cannot just put T there. Now we have talked about how to put the case endings on words, let's look at some examples. First of all, our sentence, ne Tiere hears ni nat. Who hears something here? Ne Tiere hears something. So she's the subject, she's the one who does the action. So she would get the L ending. Who is being heard? Ni nat is being heard. That means that ni nat is our direct object here and we'll get the T ending. So we get this. Ne Tiril staum ni natit. I used in the first example English word order, but because case endings give us all the important information here, we don't need to keep the English word order. Literally every single word order is possible. Ne Tiril, ni natit staum, ni natit staum ne Tiril, ni natit ne Tiril staum, and so on. All possible word orders are possible in such simple sentences. Of course, as I already said, I cannot always give you all translations, so usually I will give you one translation that is pretty random, so random word order. And any other word order, if I don't say something different or if there's no other grammar rule involved, will also be correct. Let's look at some more examples. I eat the fruit. Mau titi yom well. So who is the one eating? I am the one eating. So I, which is oe in Natvi, becomes well. Note that the well doesn't have an underline for stress. Why? Because oe, which has two syllables, so there's the stresses on the oe, so on the o, will become one syllable, well, as soon as you put a case ending on. Then what do I eat? The fruit. So the fruit is the thing being eaten, so it gets a T ending and the mauti changes to mautiti. The insect follows me. Nong he angel weti. The insect is the one following me, so it is the subject. It gets the L ending. It ends in a consonant, namely the m. So I have to put the il there with the extra vowel in between. Then who does it follow? It follows me, so I'm the direct object. So I get the T ending. I could also have said wet here without the I. The same, by the way, also for the mautiti, that could also have been mautit. The Nantang chases a Yerig. Who is the one doing the action? The Nantang, because the Nantang chases something. So Nantang changes into Nantangel. Then who is being chased? The Yerig. So it is a direct object. So we get Yerigit from Yerig. This could also have been Yerigti, of course. And then the entire sentence could be translated as Nantangil fewi Yerigit. You see him, Boti ngal tea. Tomorrow we will find it, Run au ngal dreizat. The hunter hunts the Yerig, Daron Yerigit Daron Yul. So you see, I used a wide array of different word orders here. The important thing to learn is always look at the case ending. Do not look at word order when translating things. Because the case endings are the things that tell us who is the subject, the one who does something, who is the object, so the thing being affected by the action. Word order does not tell us this. So you will need to learn to ignore word order. So now we have to unfortunately talk about a bit more theoretical grammar nonsense, namely verb transitivity. There are two different types of verbs in Natvi, actually in all languages, but now specifically we're talking about Natvi. In dictionaries, each verb is categorized as VIN or VTR. For example, if I look into Reikunju, I see Taron, to hunt, has the VTR behind it. Also, if I look into Fueo, or into Dignatvi, or into the NT dictionary, or into the verb dictionary. So all of them have this VTR thingy there. If you now look at another verb, for example, hahau, you see all the dictionaries now have a VIN there. What does that mean? VTR is transitive verb, so V verb, TR transitive. A transitive verb is a verb that can be used in transitive sentences. This now sounds very stupid probably if I say it like this, but what the transitive sentence is just a sentence with a direct object. So as you just learned, the direct object is the thing that is marked with a T ending. So basically, whenever a sentence has a T ending in it, so a word with a T ending, it is transitive because it has a direct object. Someone or something is being verbed, is being directly affected by the verb. This means that if a sentence has a direct object, it will automatically also have L and T case endings. Because, as I said, direct object automatically means that that is being marked with the T ending. But they can also be used in intransitive sentences. So just because a verb is transitive does not mean that you need to use L and T endings with it. You can also use it in a sentence without a direct object, so in an intransitive sentence. For example, I eat would just be oe yom. Yom is transitive, so the verb yom in the dictionary is marked as transitive. But the sentence I eat is intransitive because I don't care about what is being eaten right now. And then, you might already have noticed this, there is also no L ending. Remember at the very beginning with the I run sentences, we didn't use the L ending for the subject. So we already had the subject because if I say I run or I eat, then I am the one running or I'm the one eating, so I am a subject. But I don't get the L ending because the L ending is only used in transitive sentences. I eat the fruit, here we have an object, we have a thing that is being eaten. This now means two things. First of all, I am now the subject in a transitive sentence, so I get the L ending. And now we also have a T ending because we have a direct object, and the direct object always gets the T ending. So L and T kind of belong together. There are sentences where you only have one of them, so that is grammatically possible. But usually then you have a hidden or a left out of the other one. So for example, I could in principle say, well yom. So I could do the first sentence, well yom, with an L ending. But then it means something different. Then there is a left out T ending. For example, if I eat a muffin and then someone comes and said, hey, what happened to the muffin? Then I can say, well yom. I ate it. So in English, I now said I ate it. I made a transitive sentence. But in Latvian, I can leave out the it. So I can just say I ate, basically. And from context, you know that I ate it. In such sentences, I can now use an L ending even though there is no T ending in the sentence. But if I just say I eat, as in, oh, what are you doing? I eat. So if there's no hidden T ending in the sentence, then I will say oe yom without the L ending. So now we talked about transitive verbs. Remember, transitive verbs can be used in both transitive sentences with L and T and intransitive sentences without case ending, or without L and T at least. Other case endings might still be used. Now let's talk about the intransitive verbs, so the ones marked with VIN. These cannot be used in transitive sentences. And this is very important. They can only ever be used in intransitive sentences. They cannot have a direct object. That should be clear from they cannot be used in transitive sentences because transitive sentence means has a direct object. So if a verb cannot be used in a transitive sentence, that means it can never have a direct object. It can never use L and T endings. It can use other endings, by the way, if it makes sense. So I often see the misconception that, oh, L and T can only be used with transitive verbs. So now I don't want to use the ru ending with intransitive verbs anymore because intransitive verbs don't want case endings, right? Wrong. L and T, so the ones we learned today, are the only case endings that care about verb transitivity. All the other case endings don't care about if a verb is transitive or intransitive. So what we talk about here, transitive versus intransitive, is only important for L and T. And then one thing we talked about the verb srung si at the very beginning, so to help. And that is a so-called si verb. So you can see that from it having a si, srung si. So it has two parts, the srung and the si. And there are many of these verbs that have some random word and the si. And those are always intransitive. Why do I tell you this? Well, because you need to learn by heart if a verb is transitive or intransitive. Very often this aligns with English. For example, to eat is transitive in English. I eat an apple. I can use it in a transitive sentence with a direct object. Also with, for example, how, to sleep. Like you cannot sleep something. So it's intransitive, both in English and also in Natvi. But there are some verbs where even though it is transitive in English, it is intransitive in Natvi, or the other way around. Just because the Natvi word things in a different way than we do. The most famous example is nume, to learn. In English, I can say, I learned the language. That's a clearly transitive sentence, because what do I learn? The language. So there is a direct object. In Natvi, you cannot do this. The reason being that nume literally actually translates to gain knowledge. I cannot gain knowledge the language. So you will in Natvi actually more literally say stuff like, I gain knowledge about the language. So that's not a direct object, that's a preposition, about. Or regarding the language, I gain knowledge, so that would be the topical, which you will also learn in a few videos. So conclusion for this slide is learn by heart if a verb is transitive or intransitive. Always look it up. Always maybe check the verb dictionary to see which case endings or adpositions verbs are often used with. There is no shame in looking these things up. It is just necessary because very often the Natvi language just does things differently from English. What about lu? You probably already know the verb lu. It's one of the most used verbs. It means to be. And you will see interesting things. Namely, lu in Freo, the Freo dictionary, is marked as VIN, so verb intransitive. But in Reikunyu, it is marked as VCP. Not many verbs are marked that way. And also only Reikunyu marks these like that. This means it's a copular verb, so verb copula. What does that mean? Usually, you cannot have multiple different nouns in a sentence without somehow showing their role in the sentence. Usually what we do is we put case endings on them, or we introduce them with an adposition, or something like that. So we put something on most of the nouns to tie them into the sentence and to show what role they have. This is literally the one singular thing that case endings are there for. They show what role a noun has in the sentence. And usually, if you have multiple nouns without a case ending in the sentence, then something is wrong. Because then all of them look like the subject of an intransitive sentence, and then there is some grammatical confusion there. But lu can actually connect two nouns without any case endings. For example, I am a beginner would become oe lu snge iu. No case ending. Is totally fine to have two nouns without a case ending here, because the lu can connect them. This sentence, again, could have any word order, so this is just an example. You can also connect nouns to adjectives with lu. Lu ean siulang. Not only lu can do this, by the way, also efu can do this. One example would be the dog is hungry. O hak efu nantangtsiep. So now you're maybe a bit confused because in English it's the same verb. The flower is, the dog is. So it's 2 times is, but I use 2 different words in Natvi. Efu is another verb and it means to feel. So if we say that we are hungry, in Natvi we actually say we feel hungry. So efu can also connect a noun with an adjective. Note that efu cannot do the thing with oe lu snge iu, where 2 nouns are connected with the lu without any case ending. Efu is transitive, so there you would need lt if you have 2 nouns. Loak becomes a hunter. Taronyu loak slu. So slu is another of these copular verbs that can connect 2 nouns together without any case ending. As I said, only Reikunyu actually marks them specifically in the dictionary, and I think it also doesn't mark all of them. Just so you are aware, if you're using Reikunyu, this is what the VCP means. It means it's a copular verb, so it can do the special thing that can connect 2 things without any case endings. And that it can also connect adjectives to nouns. So let's look at some key points of today's lesson. Natvi has flexible word order. Verbs don't change depending on the subject. So I run, he runs. We change the run to runs. But in Natvi we don't do that. It's always to. And there are no articles, so no the and a. Case endings are therefore used or needed to mark the role a noun plays in the sentence. Two important things here. First of all, as I said, they mark the role that a noun plays in the sentence, so they are actually needed to know who is the one doing an action, who is the one being affected by an action, and they mark really only nouns. You will never put a case ending on a verb, so on the action of a sentence, on an adjective, so blue, green, so like the flower is blue. You could never put it on blue there because that's an adjective that describes a noun. So case endings really only ever go onto nouns because their entire thing is to mark what is a noun doing in the sentence. In transitive sentence, the L marks the subject. So the subject is the one doing the action. Who is eating something? Who is hunting something? Who is following something? And T marks the direct object, so who is being affected or what is being affected by the action, what is being eaten, what is being hunted, who is being heard, what is being heard. So this would be the direct object. In intransitive sentences, the subject is not marked. It has no case ending at all. So I eat, I run, I sleep, the dog swims, stuff like that. So there we don't have a direct object, so we don't mark the subject at all. No L ending. Only transitive verbs can use these two case endings, so the L and the T ending, because only transitive verbs, verbs that are specifically marked in the dictionary as VTR, can be used in transitive sentences where we have a direct object. Verb transitivity unfortunately needs to be learned because there are some differences between how English handles it and how NatWi handles it. So sometimes a verb that is transitive in English, so that can have a direct object in the English sentence, actually cannot have a direct object in a NatWi sentence because the NatWi just use a different structure to express something. So you will need to look up and learn by heart if a verb is transitive or intransitive. Very often, NatWi and English are similar, but also sometimes they are not. All C verbs are automatically intransitive, so if you see a verb that has two parts, and one of these parts is C, so the second part is a C, then you know it's intransitive. Some verbs can connect two nouns without using any case endings or a noun and an adjectives, and those are called copular verbs. Only Raikunyu actually marks most of them as VCP. In other dictionaries, they will just be marked as intransitive. And that was it already. Du se baum ngarusrak? Nije baum. Do you have questions? Just ask. You can ask me on Discord, you can ask me per email, you can ask in the comments. On YouTube, unfortunately, I always forget to look at the comments, so you might get an answer weeks or months later, but I try to look at it more. If you want to continue the full course, then here is the link to Listening 2.1, to the second vocab video. If you are just here for the grammar videos, then here's a link to the indirect object rule, which is the third grammar video. Hi, Yellow Frapo.